Dun 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 dun. All right, gang. I am super pumped. I am seeing not a new film, but I'm seeing a 35-year-old film. I'm going to check out the 35th anniversary screening of Raiders of the Lost Ark. But that's not the only film I'm seeing. I am seeing another film that is about the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Sort of.
When I went to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark, it really just kind of split my brain in half, and I wanted nothing more than to play Indiana Jones.
It's actually a documentary called Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made.
And action!
It is a story about a bunch of Mississippi youth back in the 1980s that spent 7 of their summers doing a shot-for-shot remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It's recording, right? Movie magic, folks.
It is a story about a bunch of Mississippi youth back in the 1980s that spent 7 of their summers doing a shot-for-shot remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I did a trailer reaction video for that documentary a few days ago, and I'll post a link to that trailer reaction in the description below. I'm telling you, I'm so pumped. I have never had the pleasure of seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark in a cinema before, so this is a real honorable treat for me tonight. All right, gang, it's about 11 o'clock in the evening. I just got out of the double feature for the 35th anniversary screening of Raiders of the Lost Ark, followed by the documentary Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made. I am just way too exhausted to do my typical review on my car ride home, so I'm gonna drive home, collect my thoughts, go to sleep, and I'm gonna review the documentary as soon as I get up tomorrow morning. So see you then. Hey gang, it's about 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm still really exhausted. Instead of going home after the double feature last night and going to bed as I promised, I ended up staying up till 2 in the morning to play Battlefront. But that's beside the point. I don't want to make this a review about the Raiders of the Lost Ark because I mean, obviously I've seen that movie a million times. I wrote a very lengthy and detailed retrospective review of it several years ago. I will say that it was an unending treat to finally see the film on the big screen because I've never seen Raiders of the Lost Ark in a cinema before, as I mentioned earlier. And the film just amazingly holds up so well. I think it is one of the most pitch perfectly designed, engineered, and executed action-adventure films ever made. I would even go as far as to say that I think it's Spielberg's best pure film, bar none. I will fight to the death to anyone on that assertion. But I gotta tell you, Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made, was kind of the icing on the cake for the evening for me. And for those that are really completely unfamiliar with it, it's a documentary about a group of teenagers, kids basically, back in the early through late 80s that made a shot-for-shot remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It's recording, right?
Action! That's probably the widest ending you ever seen in your life.
And the three kids were Chris Strompopoulos, Eric Zala, and Jason Lamb. And they basically, on a very shoestring budget, using resources mostly provided to by their parents, they shot the film over the course of 7 summers. Now, most of the film, the remake, was shot completely out of sequence. So you see the kids sort of growing up throughout the film. You know, one scene, you know, they could be 12, and another scene they could be 16 or 17. And one thing that the documentary points out is even though, you know, there's a lot of passion and love that these kids had in trying to be faithful and meticulous in recreating Raiders of the Lost Ark, there was no YouTube, there was no internet, there was no home video copies of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So they had to make storyboards based on their memories of shots seen in the theater, which is kind of mind-blowing when you really stop and think about it. It should also be noted that the directors of this film, one of them, Jeremy Kuhn, he actually was one of the producers and editors of Napoleon Dynamite. When the thing was finally shot and finished, they sort of had this family premiere back in 1989, and then the boys kind of went their separate ways, and then the story ends. Or did it? Back in 2002, director Eli Roth somehow obtained a copy of this, and he just instantly fell in love with it. And he also gave a copy to Ain't It Cool News' Harry Knowles, hoping that he would like screen it at his famous Button-Umathon Film Festival.
Eli Roth somehow got a copy and gave it to Harry Knowles.
He was like, Harry, I brought you something for the festival.
It's Raiders of the Lost Ark, remade shot for shot by 11-year-old kids in 1982.
That sounds awesome.
It's a fascinating story in and itself. They were going to premiere Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, and there was a late delivery of the print, so Harry Knowles decided to play the Raiders fan film to the audience. And they played about 30 or 40 minutes of it, and then the Two Towers print finally arrived, and then they shut the Raiders film off, and the audience went berserk. And they were going to throw a riot because they wanted to see the rest of this film, and then Harry Knowles knew that he had something special on his hands. This led to Eli Roth tracking down the kids, and this overnight sensation became extremely popular. And he even caught the attention of Steven Spielberg, who managed to get a copy of this fan-made film. He watched it, and he wrote a letter to the kids and basically invited them to come and meet him. And of course, what kid wouldn't drool at the aspirations of meeting the director that essentially created the product that fueled their passion and their desires all throughout their childhood? If anything, you know, Raiders as a documentary, it was just so endlessly enthralling and watchable because I think it really explores like the minutia of like obsessive fandom and sometimes the real fanatical heights that fans go to sort of fuel their artistic aspirations. And it really becomes this wonderful love poem to geekdom and to childhood exuberance and to how children use the fertility of their creative minds to create works of art, even though their resources are limited. The film sort of oddly reminded me of Sing Street, which was another film that came out earlier this year. It couldn't be any more different, but it's similar. Sing Street was about a bunch of kids in economically impoverished Dublin in the mid-1980s who decide to make music videos. And they use music videos and their creation of music to sort of escape their harsh social economic times and also the harsh realities of their family lives. And in many ways, these kids binding together to make Raiders was a way of, it was a form of soul cleansing therapy for them because a lot of them were products of divorces. They went through fairly hellish childhoods. Their parents were really struggling to make ends meet. So in a way, making this Raiders of the Lost Ark fan film gave them an opportunity to sort of escape a lot of the social demons in their closet of the time. On the other hand, you really have to sort of question the safety of these kids at times and the level of parental responsibility that occurred at the time. I mean, there are scenes where the kids are literally setting fire to their parents' homes. There's
lit that whole wall on fire.
Action! Movie magic, folks.
Other scenes where they're being, you know, in recreating famous action sequences, they're being like nearly dragged under moving vehicles, and they're coming like this close to seriously hurting themselves, if not killing each other. So the peril of the children, it's kind of shocking in hindsight. At one point, the parents are like, enough's enough. So they send in an adult to be a supervisor for the kids' shoot. This guy ends up being the most irresponsible of the lot. At one point, he's telling the kids, put more fire over here, put more fire over there. And I'm like, holy shit. The whole room is this raging inferno. Even the kids in the documentary, now 40-year-old adults, say, yeah, this guy was way more irresponsible than we ever were. The whole arc of the documentary is they desperately need to fund and make a scene that they weren't able to make as children, and that's that infamous and just incredibly well realized sequence by Spielberg of Indiana Jones fighting the giant Nazi in that airplane hangar with that giant flying wing.
Hey, Gunnar! Kom her! Kom her! Kom, kämp! Junge, kom unter da! Okay. Come on, get Never mind, get back, get back!
And so the boys managed to get some investors. I keep calling them boys. They're 40-year-old adults now. The boys find some investors. They spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to build this plane. They hire a pyrotechnic crew.
Eric and I are reuniting to shoot the airplane scene at long last.
They're obsessed.
Human nature propels us to complete things.
And they're plagued by days of rain, and the director basically is reaching a point where he's about to get fired from his day job because his boss doesn't want to give him any more time off work. And then you really grow to appreciate and realize the absolute sheer scope of their obsession with revisiting their childhood and making this film. So on one hand, it's positively uplifting and deeply moving. On the other hand, it's like, wow, their desires to get this done are bordering on fanaticism, and you start to worry about their mental health at certain points. But nevertheless, the film is just so inspirational. It's so oddly touching. It's funny how it really dives deep into these guys' lives, and you know, it really leaves no stone unturned. I mean, at one point it deals how one of the kids ended up becoming really like addicted to like alcohol and drugs, and how that kind of ruined a large portion of his life. I really appreciate the fact that it's a real warts and all portrait of the lives of these boys and of these men. It also is kind of funny how it points out how there was a period where they didn't talk to one another for years because there was a female cast member in the fan film, and they both seemed to be very attracted to this young girl, and that caused a huge teenage rift between the two men.
The first big break in our friendship was over a girl.
How could he?
They didn't want to do it anymore. They both went their separate ways.
I will never work with that guy again. Done.
So in closing, I found the film endlessly just really fascinating and compelling. It really adds a compelling layer to the whole Raiders of the Lost Ark film mythology. And more importantly, it really talks about the joys of childhood and the joys of adolescence, and really tap into their imaginations in order to bring their passion projects to successful fruition. And on those levels, Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made, is kind of a rousing testament to that, and I think everyone who is a fan of Raiders of the Lost Ark should definitely seek this documentary out.
You can see this thing's done with love. Every frame, you can see that.
It's mesmerizing.
We kind of missed out on our childhood, but the whole time we realized we were filming our childhood.
So thank you very much for tuning in and watching. Please don't forget to like this video. Also, if you could subscribe to my channel, I would sincerely appreciate it. And let me know in the comments below what you obviously think of the documentary if you've seen it. Let me know what you think of Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Indiana Jones film series as a whole. And I'll see you at the movies, everybody.
Done. That is all. Carry on.